This is a LSD trip report by Blue Dolphin, posted to arred.org on October 20th, 2005. I was living in a small dorm with 3 people that night. W was a new friend and housemate. He was a well-intentioned, fun guy who liked to hang out. He had only tripped once before, on a half-eighth of mushrooms. He said that during that trip he had freaked out and ran 6 miles down some railroad tracks. I thought his story was funny and a little scary, so I wanted to try something that would be strong but not as chaotic as a mushroom run. T was another new friend. He did not have a lot of experience with psychedelics, but he took the psychedelic experience very seriously. He had managed to get hold of 2.5 of the strong fly blotters that were being sold in the Northeast at that time. By my estimate, those flies were 2 to 3 times as strong as the fractals that were popular during the summer jam band tours. He planned to eat 1.25 flies. S was my girlfriend, my soulmate, my true love. We had broken up briefly a few days before, but we had gotten back together. Her psychedelic experience was close to mine. She also took about 16 milligrams of 2CI. I had spent the last 2 months in a loveless, chaotic routine. I was experienced with many psychedelics, but I had never taken anything as strong as the flies T was planning. I had taken LSD twice before, but never anything that could match the strength of those blotters. My mindset that night was good. I felt ready for anything, from a light buzz to a feeling of rebirth. I also took 1.25 flies. We gathered in my dorm room around 7:15 in the evening. We each took our doses. While we waited for the effects to rise, we turned on some music and talked quietly. After about 15 minutes, I swallowed my blotter. I could already feel the familiar tingle at the back of my throat. We put a DVD into my computer and started watching Smashing Pumpkin music videos. By the 3rd video, I was paying equal attention to the changing colors on the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The colors were bright, pastel, shifting in a way that seemed alive. We decided we had watched enough videos, and I went to use the bathroom. As I stepped out of my room, I entered a hallway that was a swirl of pastel colors. The doorknob on the bathroom door seemed to bend away from my hand at the last second. I grabbed it hard and the knob snapped back. I pushed the door and entered a space that felt like a tile and glass funhouse. The tiles were covered with rainbow patterns that slid across the floor like moving paint. Paint seemed to drip down the door itself. I was amazed at how visual and vibrant everything had become, and it had only been half an hour since I had taken the blotter. I returned to the room and we all agreed to go for a walk. I suggested we walk to the Sunken Gardens, a small outdoor amphitheater surrounded by modern art sculptures and hidden in a quiet part of campus. As soon as we stepped outside, I noticed that the air felt cleaner than the air inside my room. I also felt as if I were 10 feet tall, as if I were floating a few inches above the ground. I could walk normally, except for a few moments when I stopped dead in my tracks and asked myself, where are we going? On the walk to the gardens, S and T were already feeling the psychedelic effects. W was feeling the energy and euphoria of the 2CI, but the visual side had not fully arrived for him yet. We walked down a long, secluded driveway that ran back and forth across a road, forming a 4-person weave. When we finally reached the Sunken Gardens, I was shocked by how alive the place seemed. Light was strobing over the grass and the sculptures like a moving spotlight. Every sound was amplified. The sound of cars far away in the woods seemed to be right next to my ears. I lay down on the grass and closed my eyes. I felt myself melt into the earth below me. I saw the most complex, detailed, crisp, and colorful closed-eye visuals I have ever experienced. The images were like very intricate art, but they moved, breathed, and seemed to have deep meaning. I cannot describe them fully, but imagine a piece of very detailed psychedelic art that is alive. At the same time, S was having the most intense psychedelic experience of her life. She was flooded with visuals from the 2CI and seemed to handle the intensity well. W stood below a tree that T had climbed and now seemed stuck in. After a short time, T got down, breathing a huge sigh of relief. He then went behind some bushes. W asked him what was happening. T said he had become the tree and was feeling the needs of the tree. I was lying on the ground next to a stone wall, watching a shadow on the wall turn into a man and walk away. Without mentioning it, S said she had seen a shadow turn into a man and climb a tree near the wall. W wanted to move on, so we decided to go down to the boathouse by the lake and maybe walk along the railroad tracks next to it. To get there, we would have to cross the main road that runs through campus, which meant we would encounter some foot traffic. I told myself that if we kept moving and did not get distracted, it would be fine. We made it about 100 feet before we encountered the strangest tree I have ever seen. It looked like a mushroom, had no leaves, and had droopy branches. It seemed to be growing as we approached. When I walked toward it, the tree moved toward me as well. I dodged it just in case it tried to grab me. I spent a few moments admiring the bright grass that seemed to grow under my feet. I noticed that T was using one of the modern art sculptures as a seat. We all laughed until we realized the sculpture did not look like it could hold his weight. We kept moving and reached the main road. When we passed my house, I thought it would be a good idea to bring water and some herb with us, because I planned to stay near the tracks for a while. We crossed the road and went inside, where many of my housemates were sober and watching a movie. I went upstairs to fill a water bottle, then returned to my room to rest before the long walk ahead. I sat in my chair, put on Sound Tribe Sector 9, and closed my eyes. Soon after, I felt another presence enter the room. I watched our energies intertwine. When I opened my eyes, T was sitting right in front of me. I had not heard him come in, but I could feel his energy. I told him what had happened, and he seemed to understand. Soon everyone was up in my room, and we were listening to music together. We remembered that we had intended to go to the boathouse. I grabbed a Butterfinger, opened it, and stared at the shiny butter, brittle after breaking off a piece for T. It took me about 10 minutes to take the first bite. During that time, we forgot our intention to go to the boathouse again. The act of eating the Butterfinger became a small ritual. The taste, the texture, the way the chocolate melted on my tongue felt intense. It was not something to be taken lightly. Eventually, we ended up outside behind the house, slowly getting back on our way. S was tripping hard and looked beautiful. T thought he had torn his sweatshirt and was in tears. W was laughing at the absurdity of the situation. I had only taken one bite of my Butterfinger. I asked S to hold it for me. After I gave it to her, I said, "That Butterfinger has become a burden." The comment made everyone laugh loudly. The whole campus could have heard us laughing behind the house for about 5 minutes. We walked back up to the street. Cars were coming, so I waited to cross. I stepped out, only to see another car approaching. I stopped dead in the middle of the road to let the car pass. Across the street, we walked along the lake and saw a couple of girls carrying a sign and a large stuffed dog. They were campaigning for the stuffed dog to become mayor, and they were clearly intoxicated. I stopped to chat with them. I ended up having an interesting conversation and got a hookup for some rolls. Not bad. Soon a large crowd appeared on the sidewalk, heading toward us, but we finally began to feel the full effect of the 2CI. He got a little freaked out by the crowd. S and I exchanged nods with the people in the crowd as they passed. T got distracted talking to someone in the crowd, and we lost him for a few minutes. When we found him, he seemed disoriented, so we kept moving toward the boathouse. Along the path, we passed a few other students smoking bowls. I noticed how good I felt physically compared to most psychedelic experiences. My stomach was a little tight, but not enough to distract me. I felt as if I were walking on air. We arrived at the boathouse and stepped onto the floating segmented dock. We all lay down on the dock and felt the gentle waves below us. I felt as if I were melting into the water as I closed my eyes. With my eyes closed, complex visual stories unfolded in my mind. With my eyes open, the stars above the night sky darted about freely. We spent a long time sitting by the boathouse, enjoying the warm breeze over the water. Rested her head on my lap. She looked absolutely beautiful. After a few moments, her face began to morph into frightening, contorted distortions. Inside each of her eyes, I saw a burning fire. I wondered what it meant, but I decided not to dwell on it. After a while, we decided to walk down the railroad tracks. On the way, I saw creatures with glowing eyes looking at me from the brush beside the tracks. I mentioned this to S, who said the creatures were friendly. That was enough for me. We soon came to a fire pit between the tracks and the lake. W stepped into the water, raising his hands toward the wind. I watched his spirit extend out from behind his body. By this point, I was ready to smoke a bowl, almost 6 hours after dosing. We realized we did not have a bowl, so we decided to head back to my room. On the way back, we saw many kids sitting on the boathouse deck. W and T, who both knew how to sail, shouted, "Get the fuck off the boathouse," and security, and threw a few pebbles toward the kids. We were being idiots, but we all cracked up uncontrollably. Back in my room, we finally smoked a bowl. After that, my trip came back almost full force, although it had not worn down much already. T went to Arrowwood's art gallery, and we looked at psychedelic art for about an hour. I have never looked at art that way before. The images seemed to come out of my monitor in 3 dimensions, often hovering inches away from the screen. Every part of the art was constantly growing, pulsing, and changing with more detail than sober eyes could ever see. In each piece, there were thousands of stories to be told, and I could follow the progress of each living piece through the image. It was absolutely beautiful. I went to use the bathroom again and entered another glass and tile funhouse. I stared at my face in the mirror and watched it morph. Then the image in the mirror became another me. I realized I was looking at myself from the perspective of everyone else. Normally, I think I seem odd to other people, but I realized that I am to everyone else as they are to me. W decided to wander off on his own, his trip still going full force because it had taken so long to kick in. T had not slept in 2 full days, and his trip seemed to be wearing down, so he called it quits as well. Now it was just S and me, both still tripping fairly hard. What happened in the next 2 hours was the most incredible and perfect love I have ever known. Words cannot describe how amazing it was, and I do not want to try. I will say that it was the most passionate and best sex we have had in the almost 3 years we have been together. Our bond feels closer than ever because of it. Afterwards, we lay in bed talking.